How you doing there? Just as I was
looking at myself without a hat's messing me up. I'm sorry.
just as I was about to hit the start button, Curtis is like, "Oh, I don't know if I look funny or not."
Oh no, I know I look funny. It's just is an acceptable level of look funny.
I'm sorry that we're a little late starting the show. You know, the problem is we step away from our equipment, our setup, for a week at a time, and then we come back to it, and nothing is ever the same.
It's like Go ahead.
And then here tonight, I'm having internet connectivity issues. Not really connectivity issues, but it seems like I'm having bandwidth issues. So I'm looking at my frame rate just falling through the floor, stuttering, stopping, dropping. The only thing left is rolling. And
it's only right that we would have
when you're
that.
on fire, don't run. Just don't.
Right.
Stop,
when you're on
drop, and
fire,
roll.
fub. That's what you need to do.
That's a fabulous callback. And so we'll see how this goes. Anyway, this is Spec Sheet. It is we used to say it's a podcast about tech, but I guess now we can say it's a live stream about tech. And yes, we're live. It is, what is it? It's 8:47 Eastern, 5:47 p.m. Pacific right now on the 4th of May. So thank you for joining us.
Let's make sure we keep so yes, it's May the 4th, but let this be the one thing on YouTube that doesn't say it.
How do we prove we're live? Because we've kind of given up, at least temporarily, on the idea of taking phone calls. I don't think I'm going to bother taking phone calls until I am back in the Android world with permanence. Or once there you go, that kind of... Yeah, that'll do it.
It almost did.
It'd be hilarious if Curtis went to the effort of generating a fake lock screen. It's not gonna.
It's not focusing.
And you were just bragging about your new camera. Now look at the problems you're having. You can't even show us the lock
if that had
screen
eyeballs on it.
Your camera is garbage.
My camera can only focus on eyeballs, nothing else. What's the benefit of upgrading?
Curtis is actually using a proper SLR camera now. For a webcam. And by SLR, what is that, like single lens reflection or refraction? What does that stand for?
Yeah, it's something like that.
It doesn't matter. It's like when you see the guys with the big cameras that have the lenses that come off, that's what that is. That's an SLR camera, as opposed to the point and shoot cameras that have always been garbage. And although they probably, I don't even know
if you
can really
now.
Still buy point and shoot cameras anymore.
You can.
Can you?
You
Just
can.
Like regular non-SLR?
I mean, think about, you can. And all the technology that's been dropped into phones over the last few years, all of that's also been trickled down into those. I'm not telling you to go buy one because your phone is just as good, and then go get a mirrorless.
Isn't it funny the technology from phones trickled into that rather than the technology from that trickling into the cameras and use on phones?
Well, I mean, my phone is a Polaroid, so I have to shake my camera after I take a photo just to see what
Surely
it was.
There is someone on YouTube who has modified a classic Polaroid camera to have a wireless modem that you can use. So you can use, holy shit, that really is that would not be a camera phone. That'd be a phone camera that you're walking around with. Surely somebody's done something weird like that. I saw a lady who is an engineer, might be one of the most marriageable women I've ever seen. This woman is amazing. She's an engineer. She has custom-built homebrew 3D printers in her house, like a big one that takes up a third of her entire basement. And one of the things that she built is a rotary wireless phone. And it literally is a rotary phone from the old days, and it's actually, when you see it in use, your initial reaction is, okay, this is one of the stupidest things anybody has ever done in the history of mobile telephony. But then when you see it and you see how it works and you see why it does what it does and the logic behind it, other than it just being some sort of a niche nostalgia sort of, just happy little fun project, when you see it in use, you come to the realization, holy crap, this is actually a viable product that I could sort of envision myself walking around with. Although you, of course, know when you have a rotary mobile phone with a a wireless modem in it and a SIM card. You can text on this thing, by the way. It has
Oh,
a
really?
on the
I want
back.
to
It
talk to
has
text.
on the back. It has a what is that called? E-ink display.
Hmm.
Sort of like what you see in the Kindle readers, very low power consumption. With e-ink displays, the only power that's required is the initial power to get the little particles to display on the screen, and then once they're attached to the screen internally, that's done. You're done using any power. So e-ink displays are very power efficient. In fact, I mentioned the e-ink display on the back of that rotary mobile phone. Can't even believe those words are coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. This sounds like it'd be a product from Van Dieven Enterprises. Now you too can own a rotary mobile phone.
It'd be hilarious if like we actually established Van Dieven Enterprises and then we began pursuing this and we got sued. But
Yeah.
anyway, um, the e-ink display on the back of that phone is neat, but what's even neater is that there are phones coming out now with full-blown e-ink displays as the main front display. And I find that actually rather interesting, and it's not as off-putting as you might imagine. If you are kind of getting bored with phones, as I am, I no longer find my phone to be sort of a focal point of my attention the way it once was. In fact, when I find myself getting sucked into that, I get like I have this visceral reaction to myself,
Yeah.
and I get annoyed with myself, and I'm like, "What am I doing? Life is short," and I put my phone down. But just real quick, I will say that I saw this video on TikTok where this woman suggested putting your phone display in grayscale mode and putting up with it for 4 days. And if you don't like it after 4 days, you can't deal with it any longer, then fine, go back. But she said if you can make it 4 days, there's a really high likelihood that you're going to be okay with leaving your phone display in grayscale. And the idea is that we are using these mobile displays that are so aggressively saturated with color to a hyper
Oh.
unrealistic extent. And it's gotten our brains conditioned to expect that sort of coloration in everything that we are visually stimulated by. And as a result, the actual real waking living world around us looks kind of drab in ways that maybe you hadn't consciously noticed, but it was sort of an incremental thing maybe that crept up on us. And so her idea is you put your phone display in grayscale, suffer through it for 4 days, and then you will begin to notice that the world around you looks more colorful, more appealing, more inviting, and you want to then use your phone even less. So I did this. I set it up at about 9 in the morning one morning, and then at about 6 p.m., I was looking at TikTok, and I said to myself, "This sucks," and I changed it
Right. You are a product of your environment.
after all of this build-up that I just gave you here. That was what I did. But, you, the viewer, the listener, or even you, Curtis, you may give that a try because the logic is sound, and I feel like I'm going to give it another spin.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it sounds correct based on everything that I've experienced too. Because like the one thing I wanted to say is that I feel like we're in a post app world, and that's what made phones interesting. All the innovations were to make all these apps that were coming out work better, do different
What's
things.
replacing them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, video, like basically the idea that everyone gets their 15 minutes and it's on TikTok and you're going to get 1 million views for your 15 minutes and it's going to be great. And that's way more exhilarating. That and also doom scrolling through any of the social medias. That's the $1 million ticket now for, I guess, $1 billion, because everything is like I've complained several times, like our problem is when a scope and scale that everything has to be big, has to be the biggest, the best, whatever. And apps just, there's no more space for them to be the biggest and best. It's now just a few top level apps have taken over the experience. And the thing is that phones aren't exciting anymore. Like Apple's going to have
Not
their
at
event
all.
coming out soon. And the big thing people want to see is AI. And I want to.
What did you say Apple's got coming out soon?
They've got a big event where they're going to announce their next kind of slate of things, and AI
like
is
some
what.
drawing app or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, they'll be. Well, part of it'll be like updates to the Apple Pen and iPads, but everyone wants it to be AI. And the funny thing is that you look at like the Humane pen that came out, Humane AI, look at the Rabbit R1, these AI in a box things that are coming out, which are like the dumbest thing ever. What'd you say?
Did you see Marquez?
Oh,
his
yeah.
review of that pen. He just destroyed the entire company.
Oh,
After
yeah.
having met with their CEO on camera, he's having a friendly conversation with their CEO, and just like a short time later, as he's on his own, he begins really digging into the review of that, and it just trashes it, absolutely trashes it, and rightfully so. I mean,
And you
this
have to,
stupid
yeah. I
pen
mean,
that weighs 10 pounds. I'm going to put this 10. I'm not literally 10 pounds,
right?
but I mean, this thing is heavy.
If it weighs more than
shirt,
yeah,
$700, 25.
If it doesn't look like Star Trek, so I've had two desires to have a Star Trek callback already. So when you were describing
that.
Well, if it had been like that pen that you could put on that even somewhat was like an A shape, then it would have been better. But the thing is, when you mentioned the grayscale and e-ink idea, I was just thinking if all of the displays on the Enterprise and at the Federation, I was calling them the Foundation there, the Federation used, if those had all been e-ink displays, think how much blander the idea of the future you and I would have had as kids growing up, where even before us in the 60s, when these shows first came out, they still were more vibrant, even though the technology wasn't there to create true LCD screens. They were overlays with lights behind them, but that still looked more interesting than an e-ink display. So if 2100 at that future date, everyone has small little tablet devices that they do everything on, and that's an e-ink display because we haven't solved how to get to get batteries smaller and last longer, or wireless transmission of power, which there's several companies out there who claim to be able to do that, but it's going to microwave you in the process, potentially, allegedly. But yeah, like if that future was e-ink displays, it's way less exciting than if it's an iPad but smaller, you know.
Well, it could be e-ink displays. I mean, if we could condition ourselves to move away from this hyper color saturation that we've been conditioned to expect, starting with Samsung phones. That's where the hyper saturation really started in mobile devices, and then everybody else kind of caught on and said, well, why aren't we doing that too? And I know that Apple claims that they have the highest level of color accuracy of any mobile device that's out there. But I don't think so. I mean, I don't think any of them do. I think they all are hyper saturated, and they do it for a reason. It's pleasing to look at. They want their products to be pleasing to look at. It's pretty simple. But you know, something you mentioned, this post-app world. Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist. He's also something of a futurist, I guess you could say, and he's written several books going back to the 90s and made several predictions, some of which have come true. And one of the predictions he has recently made was that I think, agrees that we're entering a post-app world, but he believes that this post-app world is going to be comprised of just a mobile device that it doesn't even have a screen. It's just you tell it what you want it to do, and it just does it. Book a plane ticket, the cheapest possible plane ticket, going wherever. I want to leave on this date, whatever. There's no touching the device. There's nothing whatsoever. No interaction physically on your part. You don't even ever look at the device. It just exists. And I guess what he's talking about, see, are you guys leaving?
I mean, that's the Humane AI pen and the Rabbit. Well, the Rabbit not so much, but
so that is kind of like what he's describing is like this pen and other things, other products of that nature. It kind of is along those lines, sort of the same thing, but it's
there's just a hand floating. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna grab your hand
surrounded by people. You can't see. Stop it. Get out of here. Go. God.
We need more on-screen harassment.
I know. That's
exactly what we're missing.
This is high-level on-screen harassment here.
Right.
Get out. Go. Go away. Leave.
You're about to have
Get
your
out of
CNN
my
moment.
multi-million-dollar studio. Okay, stop.
Yeah.
Go.
This is
I'm
the
hitting-
Van Dieven Enterprises set that
Okay, give me a
I'm
kiss.
switching from my coffee to my water.
I love you, honey. I'm
Hey, I love you
smacking
too.
I'm smashing people about the head with my show prep, which was
As
considerably
you should.
dense, by the way.
Yes, that is. That's a.
Anyway, this world where you just talk to a device and it just does what you want done, and it knows how to do it. I think that is the future I want as well. I just want to be able
Yeah.
to tell something to do something, and it just does it, and that's the end of it.
You say that as your family walks by doing the opposite of what you tell them to. I get you, man, on this one. Okay, I understand. I want to be able to tell something somewhere in my life to do something and actually have that happen. If you can
Yeah.
give me that, I don't need technology. I will die a happy man in that moment right there. If I could say,
that's,
take out the trash, and then something happens and the trash gets taken out, I don't need technology anymore.
And there will be some physical mechanism that's multi-purpose that can manifest any number of physical instructions that it receives from this future, if you want to call it an ecosystem, this future platform where we just talk to a device. Like I would see the future being just this device that you talk to, and then everyone has some kind of a physical thing that accompanies it. It could be
Man,
called a
having
robot,
just watched
it
the
might
Fallout.
be a robot. It might be something on a series of rails or something that go through your home so that it can physically move.
I'm looking
about
up at
the
my
entire
ceiling like,
living
okay, I'm
space.
ready to get this mounted.
I'm kind of envisioning, if you've read the book Project Hail Mary, he wakes up in the spaceship paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. That's how the book starts. And these robot medical arms are just reaching down and like doing medical stuff to him. I kind of envision that. Like these arms can do everything.
Medical stuff.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it's like anything medically he needed while he was in this coma,
Well-
traveling to another star system, these arms could do.
I mean, that
I
sounds
see
like
some
Prometheus
kind of a
too.
physical thing like that people would need to have
Yeah.
around, because not only do you want to be able to tell this device, get me set up for a plane flight with XYZ parameters, but you also want to be able to tell it, look, I'm sick and tired of you making scrambled eggs. I want them over easy today, and stop with the heavy salt. I have a sodium problem.
But you should know that already, AI, because you're
Actually,
monitoring
you know
my.
what? You just made a fabulous point. The AI has failed me if I have to tell it that, hasn't it?
Yeah, you won't have to. So, have you watched the Fallout show on Amazon at all?
No.
Because I think this falls into several of the
It's
things
based on the game, right?
on the game. Yeah. So, like, I'm going to tie it back to everything we've talked about so far, because the first part is the robot in it, which I didn't play the Fallout games. I knew enough to
Robin.
be dangerous, but not enough to be knowledgeable in the series. So everything I'm watching on, like, I didn't know why the vaults were created. I didn't know any of the lore behind that.
I
just
nothing
know
about Fallout, so you're like talking a foreign language to me. Right
Okay, good. I mean, so like, I'm not going to spoil anything with it. It's
should
just,
I watch this with no knowledge of the game, or should I get into the game first?
I mean, I watched it without knowledge of the game, and I think without giving a full review of it, I enjoyed it. Like at first, have you watched The Witcher? I guess let me go there first.
No.
Okay, so The Witcher, I think, was the first two seasons of that show. It really falls off after season 2, but the first 2 seasons was the best representation of a video game on screen, because Henry Cavill as the Witcher, he's like summoning spells, picking up potions and mixing them to do different things. It just was exactly like a video game in the way they played it out, but it was comfortable and normal. It felt like it was right for the screen. I would say Fallout's the same thing. In Fallout, it's a game where you make choices and interact with people, and then you have side quests. So that's like the surface level knowledge I have of it, and the aesthetic of it I know. And this movie or this TV show pulls that off really, really well. So I'd say that The Witcher was the first real good implementation of a video game user experience into a show while still being a fantasy-based show. And then you have Fallout, which implements the player choice decisions really well and smoothly within the world of it. But there's this robot in it, in their world, where it does basically everything you just described, which I thought was interesting. So like the idea that you have this multi-purpose robot that can do medical, housework, it can make you food, all of that stuff is just,
I
it's
only want
a
it to pleasure me. Otherwise, I'm good.
hey, if you like a saw, like a bone cutting saw, then you'll be fine. It's got you covered.
And you can take that however you want. If your dirty mind went in a certain direction, that's just on you.
No,
I'm
I
just
thought
saying,
you
I
meant
want
like
to be
amputations,
pleasured
things
by
like
my
that.
robot. Who wouldn't want to be pleasured by their robot? Do you want the robot to do the opposite of pleasure to you? No, of course you don't.
Make that smoothie faster and better. That would please me. I am a pleasure making robot.
Let's get into some of these news stories here.
Well, really quick,
yes.
the other thing that I wanted to tie back with it was the aesthetic of it is hyper saturated colors, and everything is that HDR world of video that and pictures that we have become used to now. That all of our TVs actually have their settings are amped up for it, just like your phone is. And these shows all lean into that so heavy. So just want to say that even in our TV shows and movies, they lean into the same thing that you're describing. So anyway, go on. I see Winamp there is nearly at the end of its road.
Yeah, forget about that for now. That's like
that matters to me though.
We've run out of things to talk about territory.
The very first MP3 I ever listened to was using that. But go ahead.
Of course
That's fine.
was. I mean, look how old we are now, Curtis. I mean, there's no way we were not regular users of Winamp. But anyway, there's some stuff going on with Winamp. I'll get into it here in a little while. There's no way I'm going to not talk about Winamp by the end of this broadcast, but some of these I won't get to, I'm sure, because there's way too much. We always get sort of tangential here whenever we go through these. But I've long thought that the whole electric car paradigm that we currently see, it's just destined for failure. It seems to me until there is some sort of fundamentally new battery technology that comes along. Everything's just been lithium ion, and they use rare earth materials that require child labor in many instances, and they, in many cases, result in violence in various parts of the world due to the money that's there to be made by mining these rare earth minerals. And then we have geopolitical issues that arise because some countries don't have access to these rare earth minerals, but at the same time, they need lithium-ion batteries for stuff. Particularly today when we're trying to, or I should say when governments are trying to shove electric vehicles down people's throats, which I think is a fabulous idea, not the shoving, but the idea of
no, go ahead.
Electric
Be honest.
vehicles
Which part do you enjoy the most?
I think that's a fabulous idea, but the problem is the battery technology just is nowhere near where it needs to be. It's not practical yet, and I can't imagine enduring the stress that one must be enduring if you're driving an electric vehicle anywhere other than just around town all the time. It seems like it would just be one of the most stressful things you could do. So here comes this company producing sodium-ion batteries. The company's called Natron Energy, and it officially commences production of its rapid-charging, long-life, lithium-free sodium batteries this week. Not only is sodium somewhere between 500 to 1,000 times more abundant than lithium, but also the company says its sodium-ion batteries are made entirely from abundantly available commodity materials that also include aluminum, iron, and manganese.
They're all available at your grocery store. You want some sodium? I can get you sodium.
You can get these at Aldi. So
right, there you
chill
go.
out, everybody. The future is here. Furthermore, the materials can be procured through a reliable U.S.-based domestic supply chain free from geopolitical disruption. The same cannot be said for common lithium-ion materials, and while its energy density lags behind lithium-ion, advantages such as faster cycling, longer lifespan, and safer non-flammable end use have made sodium-ion an attractive alternative. And a level of here's where it gets kind of into some of the stats. Natron says its batteries charge and discharge at rates 10 times faster than lithium-ion. So while they do discharge 10 times faster than a lithium-ion battery, they also charge 10 times faster. So there are
Mhm.
specific use cases where that could be a huge advantage. And so the batteries are a prime contender for the ups and downs of backup power storage, and also helping in that use case is an estimated lifespan of 50,000 cycles. It's 50,000 charge and discharge cycles for a single battery. And so you get 70 watt hours per kilogram. And then those are for the batteries that are going to be like stationary for power backup
Yeah, like
situations.
solar power generation, things like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes. And then they have a variety that they're working on for mobile devices where you get about 160 watt hours per kilogram of battery material. So we're in the very early days of this, by the way. I mean, this is like the infancy of this. And I think not only are these particular batteries going to get fabulously better over the next 5 years. But I think the research being done into developing these batteries and mass manufacturing them, it's probably going to result in other discoveries that were unforeseen and unintended. And I think in 10 years, the idea of using a lithium ion battery for anything is probably going to be a joke.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, because our future is not built on lithium batteries. But the thing is, there's so many small companies that have, or companies that have had small advancements in battery tech. Because the whole issue of is it ionization? That's the wrong word. But basically, where your positive electrons get stuck to the point to where they don't transfer the charge anymore, so you have buildup over time. Like, there's just so many things we've come up with small incremental fixes for. Like, I hope to see those finally build up into a commercial application, but my concern with this is it might end up being just another example of that tech. It's the small scale version of fusion, and the idea of cold fusion, or at least room temperature fusion, where it's always X number of years away. If we're going to get to the point we want to, then that's got to be solved. We have to actually get something come to market from this. So I hope this is the one, but it just concerns me that so many breakthroughs have come out, but they end up not being commercially viable for some reason. And then you could get into the conspiracies of, do the people who make lithium batteries and all the other battery types out there, alkaline batteries, do they actually want to see a new technology break through? Probably not. But it's got to happen, because first off, going to all electric does make sense, but it only makes sense when your power grid is up to the task. The power generation you have is as clean as it possibly can be. I mean, the idea that you're going to have something completely green that works 100% of the time just doesn't exist. Electricity generation is monitored by the same laws of physics that everything else is. So there's trade-offs and problems in every scenario with it. We're never going to find the silver bullet, probably, of some type of technology that gives you clean, uninterrupted energy and is cost effective to run, or no cost at all. That's probably a pipe dream, but we've got to get to the point to where devices can be used for long terms of time, and then everything that we call green technology, whether it's wind, solar, that energy can be stored safely, and especially in homes and in industrial facilities, to be brought back online when the solar or wind is not available. So I'm all for the idea and seeing some breakthrough. I'm just a little bit jaded about it because things keep coming through claiming to be the next big breakthrough, and it hasn't happened yet.
I'm going to call this company up and I'm going to say, look, I spoke to Curtis. He's a little jaded. I think you guys go
Please
shut
do.
it down.
Let's stop this research. If you can't have it in the next 48 hours, if he can't get a Tesla Cybertruck, which I haven't seen one in person yet. I'm interested in anyone watching has seen one, but my daughter 2 days ago got all excited because a Cybertruck pulled up beside her, and she's like, "They're way bigger than you think they're going to be in person, and a lot faster than she expected." And she drives a Prius, so she's already benefiting from the fact that she has this massive battery in her car. But it kind of surprised her that this huge vehicle has the get up and go that it does. It's so big, and it was so quiet. But like, to keep having that future of these vehicles, it's not just the battery technology, it's the infrastructure to get the power to everyone. Because like that's the dirty secret, that unless you pay attention to this space, you don't know, is that if we had like 20%, I think it is, or 15%, I forget the exact percentage, more adoption of electric vehicles that have to be charged at home, our power grid can't handle it. And if you live in Texas, it even more can't handle it.
I think maybe the future is temperature differential technology. Like if you have in a particular physical space two two specific points that have radically different temperatures. I don't really understand the technology, but I know that energy can be generated
Oh,
utilizing an
you're talking about heat pumps
intermediary.
and
Well, I think this is something new that's
I
beyond
mean
heat pumps. Because with a heat pump, aren't you just literally pumping heat out of the deep
well,
earth? I mean,
like with inverter heat pump technology, what you're doing is taking a fluid that has a very low boiling point, and you're putting it in the, because thermodynamics, like heat wants to go to the place that's cold and replace it. So you're using that technology to move this fluid, and when it gets outside to the inverter slash heat pump, then a little bit of a little bit of electricity will allow the process of just natural thermodynamics to work, and then it cycles through the system. So it's a very energy efficient, as long as your thermal differential is acceptable to it. They have heat pumps now that work at very low temperatures, but those are very expensive. Most of them work between the point of freezing to about 90 to 100 degrees for like air source heat pumps. So you might be talking about something different than that, but that's what comes to mind when I hear you say that. And this is like a big thing to me, like this ironic thing where so I have an old house. My house was built in the 1920s, and I love its historic nature, but it doesn't have like a AC system in it. So I've been looking at AC systems. So I've deep dived into it. So like I'm Mr. Heat Pump, and I just had some HVAC people at my house giving me a quote to put a system in, and I was that annoying dude when they got here. And I'm like, here's the manufacturer I want. Here's the BTUs I want to do. Here's how I want to route the stuff. And the guy looks at me and shakes his head, and he's like, look, it's not as simple as what you read online. There's all these things you got to take into account too. And I'm like, no, I know. And I've taken that into account. Like, I need you to apply your expertise to my general plan.
boy, you are an
And
annoying customer, aren't you? Holy
exactly.
hell.
Yeah. So like we went back and forth, and finally he's like, look, in our
He's like,
climate,
look, I'm done here.
no, he was totally. But we got to the point to where he's like, you still need to use a gas furnace, and then regular heat exchanger or air conditioning air handler. And he's like, here's why. And he writes down like cost of natural gas in my area, cost of electricity, all these other pieces to it, the cost to put in the system I want. And he's like, I can show you here where this energy efficient system that's gas based is still going to do better for the next 10 years, unless something extremely expensive happens to natural gas. It's just, it wins. And then you also don't have the trade-offs that you do with the heat pump. So anyway, I just went on a tangent. I mean,
So he actually dissuaded you from going down this road at all?
oh no, I still want to,
But
but
I
the
mean, with
cost
the
of it.
information he provided you, the
No, he was
gains
right.
to be
No,
extracted from this, I mean, he essentially
mhm.
persuaded you, or was trying to persuade you, to just stick with conventional.
Traditional. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is that heat pumps
He really
and that
did not want your
inverter.
business, did he?
Yeah, he was just like, man, this guy's going to be standing over my. Ironically, I get it, having
He's
come
like,
from
look,
a technology
summertime,
service.
open your windows. In the winter, just close them. I promise you'll be fine. You don't need this.
Well, like I have no air conditioning in the downstairs of my house, and the previous owners of the house just said exactly what you did. You open the windows, and a breeze comes through. This house has not had air conditioning since from its inception. You're going to be fine. But I'm from the modern whiny generation where I need my air conditioning, man, or at least my family does. I go to my basement and I'm totally good to go because it's always the same comfortable 70s, no matter what the temperature is. Which is interesting because I'm working because this is work. We're doing this. This is the first time I had got my whole setup in my basement bomb shelter office. and it's always so comfortable in here. But with my lights, I mean, I can tell the temperature's gone up slightly from it. But anyway, yeah. So go ahead. I went way off topic from what you were saying. With
Yeah, we're gonna shut the show down as a result of this. I don't like what just happened, and
people don't want to see this. They don't want to hear me talking about. Anyway, if you want to donate, like if you want to become a member of our Patreon, like I really would like to have air conditioning in my house. I mean, I would really appreciate any kind of help.
It is going to a good cause. I know you thought it was all going to strippers, but I can promise you a limited portion of it is. The vast majority of it is going to Curtis's heating and cooling pursuits. So
yes.
That's
Let me tell you.
Tech.
Yes. I have radiant heating. So like I have a hydronic system that has a boiler that's gas also that runs water through radiators all throughout my house. And it's when the temperature is just right outside and inside, it's great. Like there's no heat better than that. But man, when it gets really cold, none of my rooms are comfortable. So I'm just saying, help a brother out here. And I just saw Robin says great haircut. I mean, my favorite person in the chat room right there.
And I watch Ghost Adventures, and it seems like every episode has just sort of a cold draft that hits everybody. So I'm just imagining if your super old historic house were haunted with this inadequate heating and cooling system that you've got installed, I would think that you would just be a mess in that place.
Oh yeah, you're walking, and it's like, wait a minute, cold spot, hot spot, cold spot. Don't let so. I wouldn't be surprised if my older child is listening. Do not give them any kind of like entry into saying, no, I told you it was haunted. Michael said that cold draft that I feel in the hallway right outside my room, that's proof.
So you're surrounded by people, I guess, who want to convince you that the house is haunted.
Oh yeah, like,
and you're just not having it. It's absolutely not. I put some sage in every corner of the house, and I've also got a poster of Tommy Boy in every room. How could a house be haunted when there's a Tommy Boy poster?
Right. I mean,
in every room.
We all try to reinforce the traumas of our youth onto our children. So like I think I've told you guys before, I grew up in a house that was haunted, and my parents constantly told me it wasn't haunted. And then many, many, many years later, or at least, it felt like it was haunted. Who knows? Like I wanted to keep
They just didn't want you being scared of the house that you lived in because they knew there's no way we're getting out of this place anytime soon. As is usually the case with most places that most people live in. Most people are not ready to just willy-nilly move around at the drop of a hat. So when you got your kids telling you the place is haunted, what are you going to say? You know what? You're right. And try not to be, scared. No, you're going to say, this place is fine.
Yeah, it's good. Go back to bed.
Here.
Yeah, so fast forward many, many, many years later, my dad, who my entire life has always been very just straightforward about this kind of stuff, like isn't interested in ghosts, any of that kind of stuff. Never heard him bring up anything about paranormal stuff. Or my mom was all into all that for sure. But my dad, we're sitting in a group situation in a somewhat serious thing, and someone mentions my house, and I meant, you mean the one I lived in that was haunted, but my parents didn't agree? And my dad says he basically is like, well, yeah, we knew it was, but we didn't want to scare you. And I'm like, come on, dude. Like so many years I was freaked out by the stories. I could share at another time.
We could make an entire show out of this, just talking about the experiences we had in our respective haunted childhood homes. Because I also grew up in a home that was haunted as a kid. I've got some very specific stories. A couple of which I'm sure I've told on the air over the years, but we'll make an entire show out of that. We'll
save that for
Thanksgiving. No, I'm kidding. We'll do it for Halloween or something.
Wait, here, I'm going to go ahead and do my plug. We don't have like paid sponsors, but here, you need to check out. How can I go?
Curtis, you're just encouraging the activity in your home by doing that. I really suggest against it. I don't think this is safe.
There we go.
Okay, Microsoft should accept that it's time to give up on Windows 11 and throw everything at Windows 12. Windows 11's market share has dipped below 26%, And according to April 2024 data from StatCounter, Windows 11 plummeted to a 25.69% market share after it reached an all-time high of 28.16% back in February of 24. Meanwhile, Windows 10 has risen to over 70% market share during the same period, and this is after Microsoft announced its intentions to reach end of support for Windows 10 by October of 25. And it's no secret that Windows 11 has been plagued with issues such as bad updates, steep installation requirements, and Microsoft forcing ads as recommendations into the start menu. Isn't that some shit right there?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no way to opt out of these ads, by the way. And as for features in Windows 11 that it offers over Windows 10, there's really nothing to incentivize anybody to make the jump. And some of the features, like the ability to move the taskbar, were even removed. So the biggest reason to make the move to Windows 11, at least according to Alyssa James of Tech Radar, is possibly Microsoft Copilot, but hell, even that's going to be coming to Windows 10. So
Yeah.
why bother yourself? On the last show, I think this was the show that I did by myself, I was talking about the woes I have been facing on my Dell all-in-one PC, where no matter what I do, I don't know if my kids are allowing this to happen somehow, some way, or if they're clicking yes or confirming something. I don't know what's happening, but I cannot stop this machine from updating to Windows 11. So I actually went into the UEFI settings and I disabled the Trusted Platform Module chip, and thus far, no problems. All I had to do was
Right.
go in and disable the TPM module, and now this computer no longer meets the minimum requirements to use Windows 11. And as a result, I don't have to worry about this thing being updated behind my back, as has happened many times. And then as soon as it's updated, just a flurry of issues begin, from frame rate issues in gaming to the screen randomly turning on and off when the machine is in a sleep cycle. Just all kinds of stupid stuff starts happening whenever Windows 11 is installed. And honestly, I can't think of any advantage to using Windows 11 whatsoever. I can't put my finger on one thing other than the ability to natively run Android APK files. APK files,
Which I have
are
yet
the,
to actually do.
they are the Android equivalent of .exe files in Windows. They are the file that's used to install an app on an Android device. And Windows 11 does contain the infrastructure to be able to install these apps natively in the operating system. Although I say natively, but I'd be shocked if there's not some sort of virtualization in the running in the background to make this possible. I would think there's
Oh,
got to
yeah.
be something, but I know that there is a Linux kernel included with Windows 11 now. It may even be in Windows 10 as well. It's kind of funny after all those years, Steve Ballmer prattling on and on and on about what a cancer Linux is on the world, because of course everybody should pay for an operating system. Why would you not pay for an operating system? And then here, fast forward a few years later, Satya Nadella is the CEO and Linux is included with Windows. That's really something. And I'm sure that included Linux kernel is in some way connected to Windows 11's ability to run APK files. But other than that, I cannot find a single reason to recommend Windows 11 whatsoever.
No, I mean, I got forced into updating it on my Razer laptop, the one that I play Fortnite on. And so I've got two laptops a desktop and a laptop that have Windows 10 and 11. So like I'm very regularly comparing between the two. And the only thing, and this is not worth it to me, but the fact that the UI on 11, when you start to get into the settings, they've done a better job of incorporating the new look and feel of 11 deeper and deeper into the settings options. Like until I need to get into like the device manager, things like that, do I start to recognize that I'm not Windows 11 and it's still like the back in the day Windows 2000 experience behind the scenes of it, maybe even some 98 there. But that's really the only thing that's beneficial.
Yeah, I really wish Microsoft had stuck with when Windows 11 never could have been the version a version of Windows that people wanted. It had to be this era's Windows 8 or this era's Windows Vista or this era's Windows Millennium Edition. It had to be because we had all been psychologically conditioned to expect Windows 10 was the last version of Windows.
Right.
And instead of this every 2 or 3 years arbitrarily coming out with a new version of Windows, and letting the previous version languish, not for any technical reason, but just because it's a business model. We thought that was going away, and then suddenly it's not going away. And so all the negativity that sprang from that, there was no way that was not going to taint every aspect of this rollout and how the public perceives this operating system. But beyond that, again, injecting ads into the start menu, removing the ability to have expanded taskbar items where you can see the rectangular full-size taskbar item when you have an app open, and instead you're only allowed these small-sized icons, kind of like you would have on a Mac. That is not what people want in Windows. If people want a Mac-like experience, well then, damn it, they're going to use a Mac.
That's the ironic thing is Windows 11 is the worst Mac clone ever. Like the
isn't
Windows
that funny?
10. It's ridiculous,
this
isn't it?
Multi-billion-dollar multinational corporate enterprise decides to rip off Mac OS and does it in a way that is probably more lacking than any other effort to do this anywhere at any time.
And this is at a time when Mac OS is so far behind too, because Apple doesn't care about it right now. So
it's obvious too. I find so. And you know what really bothers me about Mac OS, and maybe I could open the terminal in Mac OS here and do a lot of stuff that I don't see available in the user interface anywhere. But I mean, it is so not configurable. I mean, there is very little configuration at your disposal on a Mac, and I know it wasn't like this in the past, but at some point along the way, I guess it was probably 8 or 10 years ago when Apple went ahead and imposed the App Store, some would say, on Mac OS. And along with that, I guess I was not a regular Mac user at this time.
I would say it was the time when OS X.
When you look in the settings menu, it looks like you're in the settings menu of an iPhone.
Right.
Well, I'm guessing that all happened at about the same time they injected the App Store into the OS. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I would say it's when OS X no longer was the base. They kind of rebuilt the behind the scenes of it. And I don't know if you remember, but back on Spec Sheet episodes in the day, I used to complain that I don't want my desktop OS to become a hybridized version of a mobile device too. Let me have a desktop experience that I have full control over and a mobile experience that I have full control over the way I want to configure it, but don't put the two together. And that's what they did. I mean, they totally, when they rebuilt to not have it built under the OS X, which was still built off of I can't think of the name of it right now, but the PC. No, there's the platform that Steve Jobs built in between his two Apple stints, and he basically forced.
Next.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Next, yeah. So OS X was basically that operating system dropped into the Mac world on the PowerPC chip, and then later Intel, and that was the base. That's why everything was OS X for such a long time, and then they finally had their own secret sauce in it that was fully Apple's. And that's the point where you start to see what you're talking about. And then I would say now it's even more limited because the M1 or the M chipset, like that architecture, it's all about, like, for an ARM chip to work really well on a powerful device like a personal computer of any type, whether it's a tablet, a desktop, a phone, if you're going to use ARM on it, you got to limit the instruction set that it's working with, and everything has to be optimized. So you're never going to get a Mac experience again that is super customizable. And like I see your story there has an ARM version of Windows, and that's why Windows 11 and probably Windows 12 is so similar, because they're not going to give you the entire world. Not every device is going to work on it. They're just going to limit you because it's easier for them to keep up with whatever the current version of Moore's Law would describe, because I don't think Moore's Law exists at the same level it used to now with CPUs. But that's the only way you're going to get power innovation is by reducing the amount of choice that the end user has.
So this story sort of answered a lot of questions I had because I've been seeing this idea of ARM for Windows bandied about a lot here lately, with Qualcomm at the center of it with their Snapdragon SoCs, system on a chip.
Yes.
And I asked myself, didn't we already go down this road? So this will answer some of that. Signs point to Qualcomm's Snapdragon X Elite processors showing up in actual real-world human purchasable computers in the next couple of months. This will allegedly do for PCs what Apple's M-series chips did for Macs, promising both better battery life and better performance than equivalent Intel chips. This would be a departure from past Snapdragon chips for PCs, which would have performed worse than, or at best similarly to, existing Intel options, barely improved battery life, and came with a bunch of software incompatibility problems to boot. The Snapdragon X Elite's design team is headed up by some of the same people who made Apple Silicon so successful. The first public version of Windows to run on ARM processors, as many of you will recall, was Windows RT, which don't you just get a negative, like that full body shudder that you sometimes get when you're peeing in the morning when you hear Windows RT, which was an ARM-compatible offshoot of Windows 8 that launched on a handful of devices in 2012.
It was earlier than that it was available, because I used it in 20. Is that right? 2012. It would have been 2008 to 2010. I was using it in point of sale devices with Windows RT.
And Windows RT came with a total inability to run traditional x86 Windows desktop apps. And Windows RT died the death that it deserved, at least according to this author. And that brings us to where we are now. The vast majority of productivity apps and even games are going to now run happily on the ARM version of Windows with no user or developer intervention required. So we'll see how this goes. I think that it could be a new paradigm for the Windows using world if you can get these same advantages through an ARM architecture that Mac users are getting through the M1 through M3 platform, while at the same time being able to run legacy apps. Although I think it's sort of, I mean, at the same time, it's sort of, in some regards, destined to fail because there's a lot of vertical software out there that is being used in enterprises that is very specific to those enterprises. It's software you've never heard of. It's software that does a very specific thing, very niche software. And that software, in many, if not most instances, is not going to run on these platforms and on this platform.
That's not their market, though.
Well, it's not their market, but if Windows is destined to go down this road, which it could potentially be if this is successful, that is really going to force a lot of people into a corner eventually. I mean, we're talking probably a lot of years into the future, but I mean, eventually it's going to get to a point where, I mean, I see these computer sales companies that literally wake up every morning and what they do is they go to work and they work in a warehouse shipping Windows 98 PCs to people all over the world, brand new Windows 98 PCs, because like airports, air traffic control systems, factories, I mean, weird stuff like that are using this old-ass legacy software that can't even begin to run on modern versions of Windows. So their only option is to have this hardware that is capable of natively running and reliably running Windows 98 or even 95 or even 3.1 in some instances. And so these companies exist out there literally pumping out this hardware brand new, so you can buy a brand new Windows 98 pre-installed, ready to roll desktop tower PC for about $1,000. It's readily accessible online, and it's using totally down the line legacy hardware about $1,000 it's going to cost you, but you can get your hands, if you need it for these specific use cases, on old legacy hardware. And I think that that market there's some opportunities in that market. I think if
Well, here's what we need to
Windows as a
do.
platform goes down this road.
Here's what Van Dieven Enterprises needs to do. Go ahead and consider this our copyright or trademark right now, this episode, timestamp it. Let's build, you know, like when you buy a USB-C dongle that has all those ports, like the 11-in-1 USB-C adapter that you can buy, that there's all kinds of cheap knockoff ones from China that you can get. We need to make one of those, but put a Pentium chip inside it too, and put all the connection points on it to where you plug that into a modern computer and there's an emulation program that'll run that will pass through to our Pentium CPU, which then also has like an ISA controller that goes out to USB and then also a PCI bus from the old style. And then you can take a modern computer, even a cloud-based computer on a low-powered ARM terminal, and you can emulate Windows 98 and all the hardware and software that runs on it. If we could build that thing, we could probably sell it for $1,000 to replace these full PCs and make it do everything the old machines do. So if there's an engineer out there who wants to join Van Dieven Enterprises, send us your full schematic of how you would build that. Just understand that everything you submit to us does become property of our organization.
I think all the hardware we sell should contain EEPROM chips. Not EEPROM, but EEPROM, meaning you can only erase the data on the chips using light. I think
have you ever used one of those?
Wildly convenient.
Like I loved back in the day having to flash firmwares on chips for, like, again, point of sale printers, things like that. But we could make, why hasn't some company built like that emulation tool that allows you to run legacy programs? Because you could run it in a sandbox to where even if the main that operating system gets exploited, which it will because it's old and doesn't get security updates, that you could isolate it from your main operating system and firewall it off from the internet too.
Microsoft bans U.S. police departments from using enterprise AI tool for facial recognition. Microsoft changed its policy to ban this. Ban police departments from using generative AI for facial recognition. Language added Wednesday to the terms of service for Azure OpenAI service prohibits use by or for police departments for facial recognition in the U.S., including integrations with OpenAI's text and speech analyzing models. A separate new bullet point covers any law enforcement globally and explicitly bars the use of real-time facial recognition technology on mobile cameras, like body cameras and dash cams, to attempt to identify a person in uncontrolled, in the wild environments. And the complete ban
there's so many.
Azure, the complete ban pertains only to the U.S., and it doesn't cover facial recognition performed with stationary cameras in controlled environments like a back office. Although I don't know what they mean by back office. Although the terms prohibit any use of facial recognition by U.S. police. I guess Microsoft had to do that because, I mean, could you imagine Microsoft being at the center of technology that police are actively and knowingly using to usher in this new 1984 sort of era where facial recognition is taking place at all times, in all places? Microsoft, I mean, I'm not saying we're not going to enter that future, and in many ways we're already in it, but Microsoft has to understand what a terrible public relations position it would be for them to be at the center of that.
The problem is they have back-end systems that do all these things that just has a layer to it, to the same stuff. So this is a publicity PR that doesn't match the reality of the real services that are being used. Because you can get around the open-ended parts of that, the uncontrolled in the wild. Sure, you can have the actual device that's on the person of the police officer not be able to do that in real time. But what's to stop that feed from coming back to a cloud-based or on-prem system that's doing that scan and recognition separately, and then advising someone like a supervisor to tell that officer how to move forward? or even telling that officer directly from the terminal in front of him. I just think this is totally face saving, ironically, type of PR thing where they're actually, the systems doing this are so sophisticated. Like I would even point back to a friend of mine who has worked in that industry, has gone to China, who's described the kind of systems they're using where you want to walk into your apartment complex, it's already scanning. I saw there's a thing on YouTube that I think Vice did as well around the same thing you could look for. But you want to go into the apartment complex that you live in, it scans you and it tracks how many people are with you and they all have to be registered. Any face that's not registered can't come into your apartment complex. And then your face is the key to get into your apartment too. And your social score affects how many people you can have at any one time in your apartment. Like this isn't across the board every house, but certain apartment complexes and other public spaces are already uncontrolled in the wild doing these kind of things. So, I mean, it's not if, it's when these types of systems come to the U.S.
More than 3 years after Spotify lossless audio was first promised by the company, it still hasn't launched. Reports claim that the service is now very close to launching. Lossless audio is just simply audio that, while, yes, it's being streamed over the internet, it is a one-to-one copy of the original CD quality audio, so there's no quality loss through the compression method that is used to decrease the amount of data required in order to stream that audio to you. And it's not always streaming either. It could be audio files like FLAC files, FLAC, which stands for Free Lossless Audio Codec. That is literally the best if you're going to go for a lossless audio format. FLAC is...
I prefer OGG.
Do you really?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I was like, what?
No, that's a joke.
Boy, that
Sorry.
took me back a few years.
Yeah.
So Apple Music has had lossless audio, meaning you can, not only has Apple Music had lossless audio, so CD quality audio streaming to you over their service, but they actually have high resolution audio, which is even higher quality than CD quality. And in fact, these music production studios and publishing rights holders and various other entities in the music industry have partnered with Apple to create separate masters of their content, of their IP, their intellectual property, just for Apple's high resolution. What do they call it? It's not high resolution. They're high sample
fidelity.
Maybe so, I guess. Yeah. But anyway, it's higher than CD quality audio. So it's not enough for them to just sit in a room inside the Apple headquarters all day long ripping CDs. This is something different. And so people have been waiting for Spotify to come along with this. And they made their original announcement that it was coming back in February of 21. And at the time, Spotify said that it was going to launch later that year, but it didn't. And then the news didn't get any better when that was also the year that, again, Apple Music introduced lossless audio at no extra cost. And Spotify's plan has always been to charge a premium for this, above and beyond what people are already paying for Spotify. So a new report a couple days ago says that this time it's going to be branded as Spotify Lossless. And definitions of lossless vary, and it seems Spotify isn't even entirely sure what it means by the term. The report variously lists AAC 411 kilobits per second, which is supposedly CD quality, and AAC2, which is, I guess, 117 kilobits per second in that format is CD quality. And then, of course, FLAC, suggesting that there's going to be a mixed offering. I can't believe that. You know, it's just hard for me to process that a company like Spotify, as much of a behemoth as it is in the music business today, that they still don't have lossless audio. I mean, with the audio DACs that are built into these phones now, I don't know if you'd call them all DACs. I guess it has to meet a certain set of hardware requirements for the audio chipset in a phone to be considered a DAC, but
Yeah, I mean, it's not even really a DAC anymore, right? Because that's an analog conversion. Now they're just digital.
well, I
I
think
mean,
it might be considered a DAC at the point that that audio gets converted into something analog that you could run into an amplifier or a stereo system or
yeah, so
a
your
stereo in your
headphones,
car
headphones and
with an
speaker.
aux
Yeah, you're
cable.
right. Yeah.
But with the quality of the audio reproduction in all of these mobile devices, even the cheap low end
Mhm.
mobile devices now are able to produce audio with a fidelity that would have been impressive 10 or 12
Mhm.
years ago. And so to know that we're in that world and that Spotify, as big as they are, as much money as they make, as much clout as they have, they've still not done this. I'm really surprised by it. And I kind of would like to use Spotify instead of Apple Music because all the people that I know who use Spotify tell me that it is vastly superior to Apple Music when it comes to recommendations and how it manages playlists and manages your library. I don't know if that's true or not. And I will say that in using Apple Music, I have not really seen it to be deficient in these
Yeah.
ways.
It was better when it was Beats in terms of making recommendations, but this is a battle at my house because I'm the only member of our family who prefers Apple Music to Spotify. I just haven't seen Spotify do anything that makes me want to pay for it. And the rest of my
Yeah,
family, you know,
I installed it the other day literally just to say to myself, can I start using this instead? And about 15 minutes into it, I decided no, it's a terrible user interface. I'm having a hard time determining, like on Apple Music, it quickly determines what it thinks you want to hear. And then immediately upon doing so, it produces your own custom, you could call it radio station,
right.
that when you listen to it, it really does a great job of predetermining what it thinks you want to hear. It's very well done. I didn't find anything like that in Spotify, and listening to everybody that I know brag about it and talk about what a great job it does of managing your library and whatnot. Well, I thought this would have been just sort of a baseline feature. I couldn't even find it anywhere in Spotify. And if someone wants to tell me, well, it's there, you're just old and stupid, and that's why you couldn't find it. Well, that's not my problem that their user interface sucks to the point that I, a tech savvy person, couldn't even figure out after 15 minutes of plugging around in the app how to get some sort of a just custom stream of music for me based on my interests. And when you install Spotify for the first time, it spends a crazy amount of time with you just having you tap on artist names that you like. It's like, why did I spend all that time providing all that information just to find that it doesn't really seem to do much with it?
And you got Dudley Moore's greatest hits. Like, I didn't ask for that. Why did you give it to me?
Midler, but you know.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, we both have different tastes. So.
YouTube says it's going to intentionally cripple the playback of its videos in third-party apps that block its ads. You've heard me recommend YouTube Vanced to people in the past. Well, that's all going away. A post last Monday in YouTube's help forum says those using applications that strip out adverts may encounter playback issues due to buffering or error messages. And the crackdown's coming at the API level as these outside apps use this interface to access videos. And last year, YouTube acknowledged it was running scripts to detect ad blocking extensions in web browsers even. And I have seen this using uBlock Origin when viewing YouTube in regular YouTube mode without YouTube Premium. You can still strip the ads out of videos by running uBlock Origin in your browser. And I have seen that message pop up. And right away, I got rid of whatever it was in uBlock that was causing the ads not to come up because I don't want to get blacklisted or something and not be able
Right.
to use YouTube anymore. That'd be a little bit catastrophic.
You have to call up your ISP. Can you change my IP address? I have to use a
extract
VPN.
a lot of value out of YouTube. I mean, even
right.
I think like if you're paying for YouTube Premium, that might be one of the best values in terms of entertainment.
I pay for it.
Information availability and just it's such a great resource. I mean, what is it? $12 a month if you buy it directly from Google? 12 or 13?
I mean, I pay for the family version, so it's more than that. They keep raising the price. Like I pay, I think
That's
$30 something. But it's still worth it to me because
Do you
when
buy it through the App Store, or do you the Apple App
I do
Store?
through the App Store,
Oh, well,
which I
that's the
think is the worst
problem.
way to do it.
Cancel
Well, I
that.
mean,
You'll
it's
pay
not
like
that
a
much
third
cheaper.
less.
Yeah, it's not that much cheaper for the family plan through them.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, because I've thought about that. There
Well,
is an Apple
whatever
tax that goes along with it.
recommendations I had for you, the listener, the viewer, in the past, as it relates to using these apps to strip ads out of YouTube, just go ahead and set that advice to the side because that's no longer applicable.
We never
Um,
said that to you.
yeah.
Yeah, so whenever I use YouTube without being logged in, I'm reminded the value of it because the amount of ads are just ridiculous. And like just today, like I told you, I spent all day. I had to slightly color correct my video today because I have a massive sunburn, and I just would have burned out everyone's eyes with how red I looked. I look like the Gould in Fallout. But anyway, uh, using YouTube videos, I learned how to grade my yard in a way to be able to get, because my backyard has like this massive slope to it. So like I'm not done with it, but I've been digging out a level pad that I'm putting a retaining wall in, and I learned how to do it all from YouTube. And if I'd had to watch videos as I was watching all these hours of video, oh, that would have been such a nightmare. But here I am. I'm available for lawnscape working now, or landscape working, and
Lawnscape.
lawn shaping.
I would love for you to walk up and try and sell yourself as offering lawnscaping services.
Yes, I know. Like
Just right out
I
of the
do
gate, just totally disadvantage yourself.
I do HV air conditioning too, as well as lawnscaping if you want them. And I'll fix your computer too.
As mentioned earlier, Winamp used to be a popular music player for desktop computers in the late 90s and early 2000s. If you're over 40 or if you're even close to 40, there's a really high likelihood that you've used Winamp. And development has picked back up under new ownership. The new Winamp is now just a few months away. The company that currently owns Winamp has been working to create a completely new service with the Winamp name for a few years now. The new Winamp combines a music streaming service with the ability to directly support individual artists. There were also a few new releases for the classic Winamp player, including the 5.9 update in 2022, but development has reportedly stopped again on that. That's really all I care about, but what they're actually working on, the new Winamp music platform, is intended as a place for people to directly support artists through music purchases, early access, and merchandise and more, like Patreon, but wrapped in a music player. And it's a far cry from the original Winamp, which was just a simple desktop audio player. I guess I have to say most of my music listening life has been through Winamp. I mean, this streaming thing that I'm doing now, that I've been doing now for about 3 years or so, I mean, that is only in like the last 3 years that I have progressed, if you want to call it progression. But it's only in the last 3 years that I have allowed that into my life. This notion of paying a fee every month to stream music. It's very recent in my life that I've been willing to participate in that. Otherwise, if I was listening to Winamp on a computer of any kind, if I was listening to music on a computer of any kind, it was through Winamp. Always, every time. The plugins available for Winamp are just, even now, absolutely amazing. In fact, there's one that I haven't used Winamp in so long, but there's this one particular plugin that replicates an Optimod 8400, which is an expensive piece of audio processing equipment that you'll find in a lot of radio stations. It gives the audio that punchy, compressed FM sound, and you can use it on AM broadcasts as well. But I mean, I think it really became famous in the 60s into the 70s and the 80s with just that classic punchy FM music sound. The Optimod was really responsible for a lot of that. And so Winamp actually has a plugin that replicates that, and you can configure it to be either that or by the way, that Optimod 8400 replication, that is only a preset in this plugin. You can use this plugin to replicate any number of different audio processing pieces of equipment, many of which cost thousands and thousands of dollars, all for free through Winamp. Sounds absolutely amazing. In fact, at some point in the show here on one of our broadcasts, I'm going to have to show everybody the difference listening to music as it is released, as it is produced, as the artist, I guess, or the producer, I guess, intended you to hear it, versus what it sounds like when it's played through this plugin. It's at a certain point, my ears got so addicted to this that I could not listen to music unless it was run through this plugin in Winamp. And I mean, I got to the point where I was driving around with a laptop in my car plugged into the audio system so that I could listen to my music through Winamp in this Optimod 8400 preset in that plugin. I mean, it's like, it's amazing I've ever had sex with a woman. I can't believe it.
I went through multiple iterations of trying to put a Linux-based touchscreen computer in my car to do the same kind of thing before smartphones became a big deal. But the other thing is, like with Winamp, the audio playing side is so feature rich, but also as a streaming server with like IceCast and everything, like it's a great source for like connecting people to listen to your stream of music. Because remember, when you started this, like I learned a lot of it from you. Like the fact that anyone at any point with just a little bit of technical know-how and an okay internet connection could stream your connection out there. And like we always would use third-party services, but they're always IceCast, which is Winamp based, that you would stream to as your source. Like that app really was the Swiss Army knife of music on the internet for a long time.
In the early days when you and I were live streaming our, I guess you could say we were podcasting, but we were live streaming the recording of the podcast. You could say it like that. We were actually using tech that predated IceCast. We were using the old Shoutcast protocol. That showed up in the Shoutcast directory at shoutcast.com, which that's all been broken now. They broke all of that. None of it works any longer. It's really a shame what happened to Winamp. The downfall of Winamp was Winamp being purchased by AOL.
Oh, yeah.
And this was back in the day when AOL and the people within AOL still thought that they were a hot shit company. You know, a long time ago, I interviewed for a job at AOL. And
were you going to be handing out CDs?
No, it was going to be my job to convince people not to cancel. You know, that really bodes well for the future of the company that you're trying to get a job at, when your entire reason for waking up in the morning is to try and convince people not to stop giving, to stop giving money to the company you work for. Well, long story short, I didn't get the job. The reason I didn't get the job is because I didn't believe in the product, and I think they could sense that in me. Because when you were trying to convince people not to cancel, you were supposed to remind them of all the recipes that they won't have access to anymore, and access to movie theater tickets, and just all of this old lady stuff. Like, this is all stuff that you would say to an old lady.
Think of the keywords that you've searched for.
Yes. I mean, this is all stuff you'd say to an old lady who doesn't understand how shit really works. Well, how are you gonna get your microwave recipes? I mean, you're not going to have any idea how long to put microwave popcorn in there if you don't have AOL. That
you can't talk to your grandson anymore because your grandson's using AOL to chat. Why aren't you? And I could have done this job.
This was, God, this was 18 years ago.
Isn't that amazing?
And they were charging people $29.95 a month for this dog shit 18 years ago. And those dollars
made a ton of money too.
Yes. And then that company was, isn't it amazing to think that AOL bought Time Warner as opposed to Time Warner buying AOL? That's how big AOL was at one point. And so really this company had no idea how lame it was until it finally woke up one morning and realized it. And by then it was too late. And it was a short time after they rejected me that the location I would have been working at ended up shutting down anyway. So I sort of dodged a bullet there.
Yes,
And
you did.
I enjoyed,
Keyword dodge bullet.
like, the guy who didn't hire me lost his job, and I felt kind of
man.
good about that. You know, it was like it was a
I mean,
sweet taste.
I just my favorite thing about AOL is that I got banned for life from the MTV chat channel because I went on there trolling people.
How's that affecting you today? I want to know.
I mean, like, I still struggle to go online and talk about music with people as a result of it. I mean, I was pretty excited for it. I mean, I remember back then too, just to get banned from the MTV chat channel, it probably cost me $60 in phone bills because it was a long distance call for the closest
was it?
call center.
Boy.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing the people who will have no idea what in the hell you are talking about? I mean,
I
there's
know.
just a certain age where, like I can't even really get my kids to grasp the concept of a landline.
I know.
And
just think if they had a rotary wireless phone, it would help them.
I can't get them to grasp the concept of being interested in a particular TV show and having to be physically in front of the TV at a certain time on a certain day. Otherwise, you're shit out of luck and you're not going to see it. Like, that is such a foreign concept to my children. So this idea of, like, you placing a phone call right away, they see wireless device in their mind when you say placing a phone call to be able to get on the internet. No, this is placing a phone call over a copper pair wired system that was installed in your home probably 40 or 50 years earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And that having to be long distance. And then the concept of paying for a phone call by the minute because of the distance between you and the person. I mean, that is such a...
That was dumb
so
from
many
the beginning,
things
wasn't it?
I can't even begin to get my kids to understand. I never would be able to get them to.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one time, just this sticks in my head when I think about long distance calling, not realizing how expensive it was to call a friend of mine who was living in the Middle East at the time. And when they left, the agreement was, they sent me a letter with their phone number. And then I called them from my home phone to just like have our regular chat. And I talked for an hour to this person. And then my family got the phone bill and freaked out saying, who's calling to the Middle East for an hour? And I'm just like, not thinking about it. So I tell them it was me. And man, that was a lot of allowances I lost over that.
I remember those old MCI commercials with Candace Bergen, and all I could think to myself was, lady, if you would have just stayed in that house, Sharon Tate would still be alive today. If you and Doris Day's son had not moved out of that house, she'd still be alive today. Now here you are with a smile on your face trying to sell me long distance from MCI. I'm just kidding. I didn't really think that. But anyway.
No, that's a pretty epic take. Just think if you had the internet, you could have tweeted that to her back then.
Nobody saw that take coming just now.
No, I could not. Like, I would have gone so many. I was ready to hit like 2 or 3 different things that would not been nearly as funny as that. Like, if you'd had Twitter back then and you could have added her, man, that would have been epic.
All right, that's the end of the show. Bye, everybody. See you later. Bye.